In this video, we're going to review some of the prerequisite skills in factoring that you should have before starting your grade 12 course. So do your best with this. The best thing you can do is pause the video every time and try the questions on your own before you listen to my explanation and look at my answer. So try your best. In this first question, number one, that's just there to remind you about common factoring, right? Always the first thing that you should look for. So we look to see what's common in all the pieces, and it looks like we have a 4. So we look to our numbers or our coefficients first, and there's 1x common to all and 1y common to all. So then we open up our bracket, and what's left in there, we're basically taking each term and dividing it by the common factor by 4xy. So 4xy divided by 4xy is, of course, 1 minus, we're going to divide 12x squared y by 4xy, so that's 3. We have 1x as well left over on the top. And then we have a plus 2y. Okay, that one's just common factoring. Take a look at number 2. What I see when I look at number 2 is right away there are only 2 terms, and both terms are perfect squares, right? So this is our difference of squares. Note the different sign in the middle, and a difference of squares always factors to be x minus 4, x plus 4, right? So the same binomial but with a different sign. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 16 is 4. Okay, so you want to watch out for those ones. You should be able to recognize them. You can factor them as trinomials. You're just sort of wasting your time a little bit because you can move quickly if you can recognize it as a difference of squares. Number 3 is also a difference of squares, so definitely make sure you pause the video, try that one yourself, and there you go. Okay, in the next few, we're going to move on to trinomials. So please remember that trinomials have 3 terms, and we have simple trinomials and complex or tricky trinomials. With simple trinomials, you can simply just factor them by looking at them. You might have learned the Mann method way back in grade 10, whatever, or you might use what we call the staircase method for all of them. Try really hard in grade 12 to move more towards a trial and error / staircase method. You really don't want to have to spend the time using decomposition if that was something that you were an expert on in grade 11. You will need to be very fast at factoring these. So I tend to try to do as many of them by trial and error, by just setting up my brackets for my binomials and completing them that way. Okay, so the first one right here, number 4, is a simple trinomial. Simple because it has that 1 there. So really these ones, we're just going to set up our bracket. We know it's going to be an x in the first slot. Don't let the y's confuse you, right? The fact that there's a y squared and a y term really just means that this is a y right there. And so then I'm just looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me 10 and add to give me negative 11. So I hope that we're thinking 10 and 1, and they both have to be negative to make our signs work. Obviously, you don't actually need that 1 there, so you would just see this answer as x minus 10y and x minus y. Of course, don't forget, how do you check all of your answers? You expand back, right? You work backwards and you do the distributive property, you FOIL to expand. So you should be, of course, self-checking all of your answers. Okay, so with this next one, this one would be what I would call a tricky trinomial or a complex trinomial because of that 2 there, because of that coefficient, anything other than 1. So I like to use the staircase to organize my thoughts, and you may use whatever method you've been taught as long as you are fast at whatever method. Okay, so I'm going to review the staircase. I'll do it 2 times for you, so you can replay this as many times as you want. But this is sort of it's just a way to organize your trial and error. No matter what, you've got 2 binomials. Okay, and you should be able to see even that the first term already, 2x squared, there's only one option. It has to be 2x and an x, right? So you're really just playing around with what goes in the second term in each of those binomials. So the setup for the staircase is you take your first term right here, your 2x squared, and then you take your last term right here, your negative 4, and put it there. And your middle term, your negative 7x, goes down here on the staircase. Okay, in this first section right here, you list the factors, the possible factors, or you put a set of possible factors of 2x squared. So we would have 2x and x. You have no other options in that case. In the second sort of column right here, you would put one of the possible sets of factors to give you a 4, okay? It is a -4. I like to deal with the numbers first, personally. So looking at a 4, we have an option of 4 and 1, or we have an option of 2 and 2, okay? So let's say I try my 2 and 2 just for a quick second here. You're gonna have to bear with me, don't write this down, just watch and listen. Then you're gonna sort of cross multiply here to get a 2x. You're gonna cross multiply there to get a 4x, and then I look at it and I go 2x and 4x, that will never give me 7x. So you can try flipping positions if you have different numbers, or you try another set of factors. So I'm just going to pause and go ahead and erase some of that and reset it up back to our thinking, and we'll try the other option. Okay, so that was 2 and 2. Then we could try our 4 and our 1, right? And you position them how you just go for it and you guess. If it doesn't work, then you flip it around. Okay, so I purposely did a 1 and 4 here because I could see right away that this was going to give me 8x and this was going to give me 1x, and I know that 1x minus 8x will give me -7x. So in order to get that -8x, that would have come from this one right here, and so I make my 4 negative, and that means my 1 has to be positive, and that will of course give me -4 at the top. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy, and where are your answers, right? So your binomials are 2x plus 1 and x minus 4. 2x. And so we just fill that in up top. So we had 2x plus 1 and x minus 4. And of course, you're going to expand. You're going to FOIL that out and double check your work. Okay, so that's the staircase. Try pausing the video and see if you can try the next one on your own. And then I'll go through a quick explanation of that one. Okay, so first things first, here's my setup, and then I'm going to try some options. So 6x squared, we have 6 and 1, 6x and 1x, or 3x and 2x. Okay, and you never know which one to start, you just kind of go for it. I always like to try my 3x and my 2x first in this case. And then 12, we have a few options, right? We have a 4 and a 3, we have a 6 and a 2, or we have a 12 and a 1. So I'm going to go forward and try my 4 and 3 first. If I put my 4 and my 3 like that, then I can see that I would have 9x and 8x. Ooh, that's good. 9 and 8 will give me 17, right? To get -17x, I need both of them to be negative. So the -8x comes from here, and the -9x comes from here. And there we go. There are my answers. I have a 3x minus 4 and a 2x minus 3. So there we go, we have 3x minus 4 and 2x minus 3. So that's the staircase method. You can watch that a few times. Again, the idea here is I'd like you to pause the video and try number 7 on your own using that staircase. Okay, so if I went ahead and used the staircase for number 7, this is what I would have got. Note that the binomials are the same. So remember, please, that that means 4x plus 1 squared, okay? And it is important that you do have to write that. You do have to go to that line. You might have remembered learning this as a perfect square trinomial, and so you could recognize them right away and go straight to the binomial squared. And if that's the case, that's great. The way I know it's a perfect square trinomial is that the first term and the last term are both perfect squares, and once I take the square root of those and write them as the 4x and the 1, the middle term is those two things multiplied and doubled. If you didn't learn that, don't worry about it. You can just go ahead and use a staircase. Just make sure that you always write your final answer like that. Okay? I want to talk about number 8 quickly. In number 8, you can expand this, and then you could simplify it and factor it as a trinomial. But I would like you to recognize number 8 as a difference of squares. Here's your difference. 9 is a perfect square, and this you can take the square root of because it's a binomial squared. Okay, and it's very important that you be able to recognize that for future skills in grade 10 math. And so factoring it like a difference of squares, I'm going to use square brackets just because there's a little simplifying to do here. Take the square root of the first term, it's x plus 1, That goes in the first spot. Square root of the second term is just a 3 in both. And of course, 1's a minus and 1's a plus, right? That's our normal difference of squares factoring. So try and recognize these ones as difference of squares, but then you do a little bit of simplifying. In that first square bracket, we just simplify the 1 minus the 3, so we get x minus 2. And in the second one, we simplify the 1 plus 3, we get x plus 4. And again, check your work. You can see that you get the same answer, but these are what I'm going to call special difference of squares, and they are going to come in handy later. And the last one I want to show you right away has 4 terms. I look for a common factor. I don't see a common factor. So this is a reminder of grouping, another factoring that you should have learned previously. I'm going to reorder these. It looks like I have some groups right there. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ones that I want to group beside each other. Okay, remember the order you write them doesn't matter as long as they have the correct sign, which is the sign in front. Okay, and then I'm going to basically common factor within my groups. Okay, so 10xy and minus 5x have a 5x in common. Okay, what's left over? I have 2y, subtract 1. And then I have a 4y and a negative 2. Sometimes I need to play around with the signs here, but I'm going to pull out a 2. And when I say pull out a 2, of course, I mean a positive 2. And then what am I left with here? A 2y minus 1. And of course, if you've done this grouping correctly, then this binomial and this binomial should match. And basically, then you're going to common factor out that binomial. Okay, so common to both of those terms is now 2y minus 1. And what's left? 5x plus 2. So that's factor by grouping, another one that you should have seen previously. And the last thing I want to remind you about is solving, right? So we have 2 ways that we've learned to solve. The first one is to factor and then solve for x. And if it's not factorable, then the second method would, of course, be the quadratic formula. And I've written it down there for you on the right, just in case you don't have it put to memory. Okay, so let's go for it. So looking at these, of course, they look a little different. They're set up as equations, solving equal to 0. So the first thing we want to do is put everything on to one side and factor. So hopefully you can see that the first one is a difference of squares, x minus 1, x plus 1 equals 0. And then we're just going to take each bracket, right, and set it equal to 0 and solve the linear equation. So hopefully you remember seeing this before. X equals negative 1. So we have 2 solutions here in terms of solving. We have 1 and negative 1. You do not need to show this line. I'm just showing it to you a couple times here to make sure you get the hang of it. Once you get the hang of it, you can go straight to the answers here. Okay, so pause the video, see how many of these you can do on your own. Okay, number 2, there's going to be a common factor. So this one is really just here to remind you that the solutions are y equals 0 and y equals 4, right? So don't forget about this y equals 0 solution. Okay, third one is that tricky trinomial there. So here's my setup for it. And right away I know my options are 2 and 1. And I can see right away that if I place them like that and use positive signs, I have that factored correctly. So 2 solutions here. One of them is x minus 2. And just a reminder for this one that 3x equals negative 1, so x equals negative 1/3. And you're just going to leave that as a fraction there. No decimals allowed here. Okay, and in that final one, number 4, the reason that one's there is just to remind you that the way you solve this is you move all the terms to one side first before you try to factor. This is a simple trinomial, and so your solutions are x equals 5 and x equals 1. Right? So take a look at number 5. Again, pause the video. I hope you can see that this one is there because this one doesn't factor. So this is the case where we then use the quadratic formula. Okay, so we have negative b. b is negative 1. So when we put in negative b, we end up with a positive 1. Plus or minus, we're going to do our b squared, which is negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, and c, which is also positive 1. All over 2 times 1. And we're just going to simplify that as far as we can using your radical skills from grade 11. Okay, so there it is, simplified as far as we can go. Now, of course, in this one, you should recognize that the discriminant, right, the number under the square root, the b squared minus 4ac is actually negative. So a reminder, what does that mean for the solutions? That means that there are actually no solutions. And we're going to talk more about that in this first unit coming up, but that's your knowledge that you should know up until now. And so if you were able to solve that, you would leave it as exact. This is what we call exact here, written as the square root. And then you could go ahead and approximate both of the roots as a decimal if possible as well. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and practice some of those skills. There's a whole sheet of factoring and solving for you to practice.